Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, September 13th, here to bring you the latest information on Hurricane Lee. Big changes here at 5 o'clock as we've now issued a hurricane watch for portions of the coast of Maine, tropical storm watch for much of the rest of the coast of New England, storm surge watch for portions of Cape Cod Bay. So we'll get to all that here in a minute. We want to start off here taking a look at Lee. Maximum sustained winds now about 105 miles per hour, almost 400 miles south-southwest of Bermuda, now moving a little faster toward the north-northwest at about 10 miles per hour. And the story with Lee has not changed. The biggest issue with Lee is going to be the size of the storm. Hurricane force winds that you see here in red extend out more than 100 miles away from the center of the storm. Tropical storm force winds more than 250 miles away from the center of the storm. So as Lee moves northward over the next couple of days, it's going to pass well west of Bermuda, still expected to bring tropical storm conditions to that island on Thursday and Thursday night as it passes well to the west. And now as we have the center of Lee approach and move to the east of the coast of New England and then approach the coast of down east Maine and Atlantic Canada as we go through Saturday and into Saturday night, late Saturday and into Sunday, we are now have a tropical storm watch in effect from Watch Hill, Rhode Island, all the way up to Stonington, Maine. That includes places like Boston, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Block Island, Cape Cod. That means tropical storm conditions are possible within those areas within about the next 48 hours or so. And then from Stonington, Maine, all the way to Eastport to the Canadian border, we have a hurricane watch in effect, which means that hurricane conditions are possible in this area because we expect the core of Lee to move very close to the coast of down east Maine during the day on Saturday. And we're likely to see additional watches issued up into portions of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia by the Canadian Hurricane Center either later tonight or early on Thursday. But again, the big story with Lee is going to be the size. So even though the peak winds are going to decrease as the storm moves over cooler waters, the size of the storm is going to continue to grow. So those impacts are going to be felt well away from the center of the storm. Wind, storm surge, dangerous surf and rip currents, coastal flooding, and some heavy rainfall. So if we take a look next at the arrival time of the tropical storm force winds. We're looking at those arriving in the tropical storm watch area in southeastern New England Friday evening time frame, and then spreading northward along the rest of the coast of Massachusetts, up in New Hampshire, southern Maine, Friday evening and Friday night, and then up into the hurricane watch area by the time we get to early Saturday morning. So again, you're going to have some time to prepare for this storm. You got all day Thursday, most of the day Friday to get ready. The highest chances of those hurricane force winds is going to be potentially in down east Maine, but even there, that's where we're more likely to see this higher end or more damaging tropical storm force winds. And we can certainly see, tree damage, some power outages, and significant impacts, especially in places like down east Maine and places like Cape Cod and Nantucket that are farther east and going to be closer to the stronger winds associated with Lee. In terms of storm surge, we have a storm surge watch that's in effect for Cape Cod Bay and Nantucket. Those areas we could see the potential for life-threatening inundation from storm surge as much as 2 to 4 feet of water above ground level on the bay side of Cape Cod and in Nantucket as well. We're also looking at everywhere you see here highlighted in blue, widespread values of inundation of 1 to 3 feet above ground level are possible if the storm surge happens at the time of high tide. There's big tidal variations here in the northeastern United States, so the tide timing makes a big difference in what the water levels are going to look like. But this far out, we have to assume that and plan for the fact that the surge could occur at the time of high tide, and that's what you're going to see here. 1 to 3 feet in the blue areas, that's the entire coast of Maine, New Hampshire, places like Boston, down along the northern neck, southern coast of Massachusetts, all the way through Long Island Sound, where even to western Long Island Sound, the southern shore of Long Island, we could see 1 to 2 feet of inundation, as well as, again, the large wind field of Lee is going to be pushing a lot of water into the New England coastline, into Long Island Sound over the next few days. Again, we've been talking about the rip current risk. This is the current rip current risk across the East Coast. High risk all the way from New York all the way to Florida for most of the U.S. coastline. Moderate risk now all the way up to Maine and in portions of southeast Florida. Again, going to be very dangerous surf and rip current conditions expanding northward along the U.S. East Coast over the next several days and into the weekend. So please heed any warnings about going into the water. A reminder that even here off the southeast coast and in the Carolinas and mid-Atlantic states, hurricanes that are well offshore can produce very dangerous surf and rip current conditions. We lose a lot of people to that hazard, and go to weather.gov/beach for more information on the beach forecast in your area. I do want to touch on the rainfall hazard. The highest risk of flash flooding that we're expecting to see is going to be across much of Maine, and this is really highlighted for this sort of Saturday time frame. Places like Bangor, Caribou, all the way over to Eastport. We're expecting rainfall totals of 1 to 4 inches across especially portions of Cape Cod, extreme southeastern Massachusetts, and much of Maine. These exact totals will vary depending on the exact track that the center of Lee takes, but again, going to be multiple impacts over the next several days. So again, we're expecting conditions, tropical storm conditions in Bermuda beginning early tomorrow, where we have a tropical storm warning in effect. We have the possibility of hurricane conditions, heavy rainfall and coastal flooding for portions of down east Maine, where we have that hurricane watch in effect. We have a storm surge watch in effect for portions of Cape Cod Bay, and a tropical storm watch in effect for much of the coast of New England, all the coast of New England, south of Stonington, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. Those are going to be areas where we could see the tropical storm conditions possible as we get into Friday and Saturday. Again, so multiple hazards, potential for heavy rainfall as well. So stay tuned. Listen to any advice you're given by your local officials about getting prepared for the storm over the next couple of days. And please come back to hurricanes.gov for more information about Lee and check in every day at least, and go to weather.gov for your local National Weather Service forecast office. So stay tuned here for more updates as we go later into the week. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.